Hey everybody, how's it going? So this is a new one here at the channel, which is going to be really exciting. If you're actually watching it on YouTube, you'll be checking it out in segments. Each discussion segment and the pitch segment will be its own separate upload. And then if you're watching it, or I guess listening to it on platforms such as Spotify, SoundCloud, and iTunes, it should just be one long audio track, but with probably time markers listed in the description for your convenience. And today I am joined by Brandon Katz from The Observer, formerly known as the New York Observer. And you can find him on social media platforms like Twitter with the username great_Katzby, which I think is hilarious. But yeah, Brandon, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, Josh. I'm excited to talk a little entertainment.
Yeah, we've been kind of trying to do this forever, so I'm happy to finally be able to pull the trigger on it today. But yes, so our topics today, if I didn't already mention it, the first one, we're talking about the sequel trilogy for Star Wars, kind of the legacy of that going forward, since hopefully for when you guys are listening to this, it will be the release weekend of Star Wars: The Rise of Skywalker, technically cementing the final part of the Skywalker trilogy. And then after that, our next segment, we're talking about toxic fandoms here today, which some people may or may not connect to things like Star Wars or the DC films or even the Marvel films, really, considering how ravenous that fan base could be. And then we're going to be transitioning to something I'm personally really interested in talking with Brandon about, which is the streaming wars, which seemingly is just at the beginning of what may be a very long era of subscriptions coming out of my wallet. Ending it off, our pitch segment is basically acting as if Lucasfilm goes to either one of us and basically says, look, the Skywalker saga is over. We need a new face, a new trilogy for this Star Wars franchise. Getting onto the streaming wars, which personally I was really interested in talking to you about once I kind of read your thoughts on it. I think the way the streaming wars will end eventually is all the big studios that own basically all the, mini publishers and, this and that people don't know of. I think they're just going to become basically their own streaming services. And we're going to go through this experience of having growth and growth and growth with regards to, like, for example, Disney will have ESPN Plus, we'll have Hulu, we'll have Disney Plus, all these things, right? But eventually they're going to package it all together just under, I guess, one streaming service. Comcast, Universal, NBC will do something similar. And that's my theory. We're basically going to have the studios as streaming sites.
Well, we're already pretty much, on that path. Fox's content is mostly being rerouted to Hulu, which is under Disney. But I do think Disney will keep its silos separate in the sense that Hulu is for the kind of adult skewing content. Disney Plus is for the family-friendly content. ESPN Plus is obviously sports. You've got NBC Universal, owned by Comcast, launching Peacock in spring. You've got Warner Media, owned by AT&T, launching HBO Max in May. You have existing biggies like Netflix and Amazon and Apple TV. The thing is, you got CBS All Access also, which is now, the newly formed Viacom CBS. But the thing is, there is only a finite amount of hours in a day. And despite a potential global audience, there probably is not a big enough pie for each and every one of these services to gain the necessary subscriber numbers to stay afloat forever. So what I think you're going to see, and what we are seeing right now, is this huge expansion and growth where each deep-pocketed tech company and each studio is seemingly launching their own streaming service to maintain this kind of vertical integration control over their content. But eventually, you will see the stragglers start to fade away, and those studios may fold up their streaming service and return to the old traditional licensing model in which they kind of sell their content to third parties like a Netflix, like an Amazon, because simply the market cannot sustain so many marquee, high-profile, powerful streaming services. Eventually, you're going to see people start to fade. And you also may see tech, like an Amazon, like an Apple, continue to consume other smaller companies and studios and bring those streaming services under their master over-the-top system.
Yeah, no, exactly. Well, actually, speaking on it, first off, I think the Peacock name is just terrible. Besides that, which one of them do you think will actually probably fold first and go back to how things were in the past? Because personally, I think it will be Apple. I don't think it's profitable enough from what I've seen. Their TV shows and all that. It seems like they're spending way more than they're probably making at this moment.
Here's the thing about Apple, and here's why I actually think you might be wrong on this one, is because Apple does not care how much the streaming costs. They don't care about turning a profit off of Apple TV Plus. They are the most valuable company in the history of history of the world. The first $1 trillion company. The $6 billion they're spending on content in the first year of Apple TV Plus is just a drop in the bucket to them. And the reason they don't care about the cost of streaming is because it only exists to drive consumers to their primary business, which is product sales. So they will happily go on losing money on Apple TV Plus for the rest of eternity as long as people are tuning in and buying Apple products as a result. I mean, they had a brilliant strategy in which they gave a 1-year free subscription to everyone who bought a new Apple product, a laptop, an iPhone.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because I'm doing that right now because I upgraded my iPhone. So I've been using that promo, if you will.
Exactly. And that's roughly 100 million new subscribers in an annual period right there. And then when you look at their potential market penetration, Apple TV Plus is available on every single Apple device, and there is over 1 billion active worldwide Apple devices right this second. So I don't love Apple's content library. I don't love their collection of originals to start off. There's some decent stuff.
I enjoyed the Servant, but that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's some decent stuff, but certainly no must-watch programming that is really capturing the zeitgeist. But they will continue to grow out their library, and they'll continue to sell that as added value to potential Apple customers. Unlike a Netflix, where their primary and only source of revenue right now is subscribers. They don't have a kind of third-party ecosystem to turn a profit. They need to focus on growing their customer base and surviving and winning the streaming wars. They're obviously a market leader with a ginormous lead to start off. But, Apple and Amazon have a huge advantage over the rest of the competition in that entertainment is not their number one emphasis.
And Disney to a certain extent. I mean, not that it's not their main emphasis, but more so that they're just already so dominant in all other aspects. Since you mentioned that, which of the many current leaders in the streaming wars, which one do you think will probably fall first? Because it kind of sounds like from how you're talking, you think it's going to be Netflix almost, which is interesting.
I do believe that Netflix will need to innovate to stay ahead. Now, whether that is monetizing their current subscription lead with a unique advertisement-supported option or something else, I do believe you'll see that eventually. But if I had to choose from the major players, I think Peacock is looking at an uphill battle. Not only are they not pivoting to a over-the-top, direct-to-consumer number one focus like Warner Media, like Disney, they're more so doing it as kind of a complementary business, but they're also operating on the assumption that cord cutting isn't accelerating. The main thrust of the upcoming Peacock streaming service is that existing Comcast subscribers, of which there's about 50 million, will gain access to Peacock free of charge. But cord cutting is accelerating. Nearly 3 million people opted out of a traditional pay TV subscription in 2018 alone, and that number is going to be bigger in 2019. So their big customer base is actually going to shrink. Now the question is, do they have the top-tier attractive content to convince people who cut the cord to pay yet another subscription fee for Peacock when all of these other well-established high-profile options are already out in the market? I think
Probably
that's going to be a big challenge. Exactly. So I think right now, if you're looking at all of the major powers, they have the largest and most difficult barrier to success.
Yeah, because, I mean, when I think about Peacock, I mean, I know The Office is something that really banking on people subscribing for, but then at the same time, with something like The Office, you can easily just buy the whole series or a specific season on DVD or Blu-ray for really, after the year, probably cheaper than a Peacock subscription. Yeah, I just don't see the attractiveness of Peacock the same way, a Netflix or a Disney Plus or even at least Apple TV to some extent have. With the streaming wars, one thing I was really kind of curious on your thoughts, for this is, do you see any of them joining forces anytime soon? Like let's say 5-10 years down the road, it's becoming obvious it's like a 1-2 horse race. Let's say it's Apple and Disney, right? Because Apple can just keep throwing money at stuff, probably actors and directors and all that to produce content. And Disney's Disney. I mean, out of the various ones, I can easily see Amazon Prime kind of slipping a little bit.
It'll be tough on a studio level to see a ton of consolidation because, ultimately a Warner Media is a direct competitor to Disney, which is a direct competitor like Viacom, CBS. Those are all, for the most part, similar-ish companies that are trying to accomplish the same goal. So to see some cooperation, across the aisle between them would be a surprise. I think a lot of this consolidation conversation depends on what the future merger and acquisition landscape looks like. The reason Hulu is now under the Disney umbrella is because Disney took over Fox, which then gave them a majority stake in Hulu. Now, of course, there's going to be some smaller properties that go up for sale. Discovery Communications is one that's talked about all the time. Some people think Sony will eventually sell off its entertainment division. We don't know. Those will definitely play a role. But I think more so the consolidation could come from these giant tech companies that are, twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times the size of some of these traditional entertainment conglomerates. You might see them eventually start to poke at a traditional media company like a Sony, like a Viacom, CBS, and try to take those over and build more services under the giant conglomerate umbrella that they are, especially when you're worth $1 trillion.
Yeah, I 1,000% expect Apple within the next decade to buy one of these movie studios. I think there was a report that they were eyeing one of them. But I 100% believe that they're going to probably do that.
There's a lot of hearsay, and there's a lot of he said, she said when it comes to Apple. Now, do they need a content library from one of these existing studios? Absolutely, they do. But the biggest acquisition Apple has ever made was Beats by Dre for about $3.5 billion. So these type of, tens of billions of dollars type of acquisitions that people keep projecting would actually be very much outside of Apple's MO. Do they need it? Would it help Apple TV Plus immensely? Yes, maybe they'll go for like a Lionsgate or something, or a Legendary Entertainment, something like that. But it would be a departure in terms of modus operandi. So we'll have to keep our eyes on that one.
Yeah, because the more I think about it, I can see Apple in particular doing something where maybe they just pick up dead shows, that get canceled from other places, kind of how Netflix picked up Lucifer after it was canceled. I could definitely see Apple TV maybe doing something like that, to do like an immediate infusion of new content that's familiar to people from other places. But at the same time, the more I think about it, I can see like Netflix and Warner Media kind of partnering up in a way where, Warner Media, maybe they kind of wind down that service, in a few years, and that content just goes on Netflix. So I think WB already has some sort of distribution overseas, at least a distribution partnership with Netflix, because I think Titans is on Netflix, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, absolutely. They have a very unique partnership, and Netflix has a ton of partnerships with, broadcast networks here in America for overseas distribution. Eventually, Warner Media does want HBO Max to be international, but that's not going to happen for several years.
You kind of said it yourself. I mean, Netflix, I really hope they innovate, because once upon a time, they were kind of laughed at a little bit within their industry. No one took them seriously. Blockbuster could have bought them and probably wished they did. Kind of like that Drake song, How About Now? Like, it's kind of crazy to see how things have changed. And then even this different studios, I'm sure when they agreed to let their shows like The Office and just tons of those shows, Friends and all that, when they agreed to let them go on Netflix, they probably didn't think it would be helping create the powerhouse they've made today. And now look at Netflix. They basically greenlight any documentary or stand-up show you could think of.
This is the future of entertainment we're talking about right here. The streaming wars is the dominant story of entertainment, and they will decide how and where and how much content we consume in the future.
Yeah, I'm really curious to see how things will go, not just from movies and stuff like that, of course, but TV. Brandon, thanks for joining me today. It's been great. Feel free to follow Brandon on Twitter at @great_Gatsby. And yeah, well, I guess I'll just leave it off to you really quick to say any final thoughts.
I just want to thank you for having me on, Josh. It was a whole lot of fun. And for everyone listening, just keep loving entertainment.
For those listening on YouTube, feel free to subscribe, comment, like, share the video. And if you're on a platform like SoundCloud, iTunes, or Spotify, thanks for listening on those. I know it's probably a very long listen at this point. Hopefully it fit well with your commute to work or from work to home. And give it a share if you like, a little heart like on SoundCloud, and follow us, add us to your favorites on iTunes and Spotify, and we'll see you guys later.